Mommy, is that the man who said you couldn't have babies? Those 9 words pierced through the decorated wedding venue like lightning splitting the sky. Those 9 words. 9 simple words from a 6-year-old boy that would shatter a man's carefully constructed lies. Mommy, is that the man who said you couldn't have babies? The question echoed across the elegant garden where 300 guests sat dressed in their finest attire. Cameras that had been positioned to capture a joyous wedding now swiveled toward the entrance, where a woman stood holding the hands of 3 identical boys. The gasps were audible. Phones came out. Faces froze in shock. Everyone stood still as if time itself had stopped. Because in that moment, Grace Okonkwo did what no one else had the courage to do. She appeared at her ex-husband's wedding with undeniable proof that he had destroyed her life based on a lie. But let's back up. Let me tell you how she got there. How a woman who'd been thrown out of her marriage, branded as barren, humiliated publicly, and left with nothing, came to stand in a designer dress with 3 sons, facing the man who had nearly destroyed her. Before we continue with this story, I need you to do something. If you're watching this, please subscribe to Folktales right now. Click on that subscribe icon to subscribe for free and turn on that notification bell. Hit the like button to like this video and comment below with your country so I know where you're watching from. Trust me, you won't want to miss a single moment of what I'm about to tell you. Now let me take you back to where it all began. Her name was Grace Okonkwo, and if you had told her 7 years ago that she would one day crash her ex-husband's wedding in a limousine with 3 sons, she would have laughed in disbelief. Her life was a nightmare she couldn't escape, or at least that's what she thought. Grace had been married to Chike Okonkwo for 5 years. 5 years of trying, praying, and hoping for a child that never came. 5 years of watching her husband's love turn to resentment, his patience transform into cruelty, his promises dissolve into accusations. It started small, as these things always do. Maybe you should see another doctor, Chike would say, his voice tight with frustration after yet another negative pregnancy test. Grace had seen 12 doctors, 12 specialists across Lagos who all told her the same thing. There was nothing wrong with her. Her reproductive system was perfectly healthy, but Chike didn't want to hear that. He didn't want to consider that perhaps the problem wasn't with her. Because in Chike's world, in his family's world, in the world of his wealthy, traditional parents, a woman's primary value was measured in her ability to produce heirs, and Grace, despite being beautiful, educated, and devoted, was failing at the one task that mattered most. "My mother says you're cursed," Chike told her one evening, his words casual, as if he were commenting on the weather. "She thinks you did something in your past that's preventing you from conceiving." Grace felt each word like a slap. She looked at the man she'd loved since university, the man who'd once written her poetry and promised her the world, and barely recognized him. "Chike, we've both been tested," she said quietly. "The doctors said—" "I don't want to hear about doctors," he shouted, slamming his hand on the dining table. The sound echoed through their massive house, a house that felt more like a mausoleum than a home. "My family needs an heir. My father is getting old. What am I supposed to tell them?" What happened next unfolded with devastating speed. Chike's mother, Nkem, moved into their home to help, but helping meant criticizing everything Grace did, suggesting she was too educated, too modern, too independent, all reasons why God was punishing her with barrenness. "In my time, women knew their place," Nkem would say, her voice dripping with contempt as Grace served her breakfast. "They focused on their homes, their husbands, their wombs. Not these careers and books and independence." Grace endured it all in silence. She prayed harder. She submitted more. She tried every suggestion, every herbal remedy, every prayer session Nkem recommended. Nothing changed except her dignity, which eroded a little more each day. Then came the day that changed everything. Grace returned home early from her job as a school teacher, a job she loved, teaching English literature to bright-eyed teenagers. She'd had a particularly good day, and she wanted to surprise Chike with his favorite meal. But the surprise was hers. As she approached their bedroom, she heard voices, her husband's voice, and a woman's, young, breathless, giggling. "When are you going to divorce her?" the woman asked. Grace's hand froze on the doorknob. Her heart pounded so loudly she was certain they could hear it through the door. Soon, Cheek replied. Very soon. I'm just waiting for the right moment. My lawyer is preparing the papers. But what about her? Won't she fight for the house, the money? Cheek's laugh was cold, cruel, a sound Grace had heard directed at others, but never understood until now. She has nothing. The prenup her stupid self signed gives her nothing if we divorce due to her failure to produce children. She'll leave with exactly what she brought. Nothing. Grace stood frozen in the hallway, her world crumbling around her. The prenup. She remembered signing it 7 years ago, so in love, so trusting, not bothering to read the small print. Cheek had assured her it was just a formality his father insisted on. She'd signed every page without question. She didn't confront them. She didn't burst through the door. Instead, she walked backward, down the stairs, out of the house, and into the street, moving like a ghost through her own life. That night, she slept in a cheap hotel room, using the small amount of money she'd secretly saved from her teaching salary. The next morning, she called in sick to work and went to see a lawyer with her own money. The lawyer, a sharp-eyed woman named Amara, reviewed the prenup and shook her head grimly. This is one of the worst I've seen, Amara said. If he divorces you on grounds of infertility, you get nothing. Not the house, not his assets, nothing. You'd even have to return any gifts he gave you during the marriage. Grace felt her last hope dissolve. But I'm not infertile. We've both been tested. Do you have those test results? They're at home, in his office. Amara leaned forward. Then get them, before he destroys them. Get every medical document you can find, especially any tests he took. That's your only leverage. That evening, while Cheek was out with his mistress, because now Grace knew where his business dinners really took place, she searched his office. Her hands trembled as she rifled through his files, but she found what she needed. Medical reports, test results, multiple tests from multiple doctors, all showing the same thing. Cheeky had severe fertility issues, low sperm count, poor motility. The problem wasn't her. It had never been her. But Grace never got the chance to use those documents. The next morning, before she could make copies, before she could take them to Amara, Cheek and his mother confronted her in the living room. We need to talk, Cheek said, his voice flat, emotionless, and Kem stood beside him, her face twisted with satisfaction. You're being divorced, she announced, as if delivering a verdict in court, for your failure as a wife, for your cursed womb, for your inability to give this family what it needs. Pack your things and leave, Cheek added. Today, now. The driver will take you wherever you want to go, but you're not spending another night in this house. Grace looked at the man she'd loved, at the woman who'd made her life miserable, and felt something shift inside her. I know about your test results, she said quietly. Cheek's face changed. Just for a moment, fear flashed across his features. But then Nkem laughed, a harsh, mocking sound. What test results? There are no test results. My son is perfectly healthy. You're just making up lies because you can't accept your own failure. I saw them in your office. Multiple doctors, multiple tests. You went through my private papers? Cheek's voice was dangerous now. You invaded my privacy? Within an hour, Grace found herself standing on the street with one small suitcase containing her clothes, her certificates, and her mother's old Bible. The medical documents? Gone. Cheek had destroyed them the moment she mentioned them. The gates of the mansion closed behind her with a finality that felt like the end of her world. She had nowhere to go. Her parents were dead. She had no siblings. Her friends from university had drifted away during her marriage. Cheek had seen to that, isolating her slowly, systematically. That night, Grace slept on a bench in a small park, clutching her suitcase, crying until she had no tears left. Little did she know, her miracle was already growing inside her. The next morning, feeling sick and dizzy, Grace stumbled into a public health clinic. She assumed she was ill from stress, from sleeping outside, from the trauma of losing everything. The nurse who examined her was young, kind, and gentle. After some basic tests, she took Grace's hand and smiled. Congratulations, she said. You're pregnant, about 6 weeks along. Grace stared at her in shock. That's, that's not possible. I can't have children. Everyone said, well, someone was wrong. You're definitely pregnant. And actually, the nurse looked at the ultrasound screen, her eyes widening. Oh my, you're having triplets. Triplets. 3 babies. 3 sons, as she would later discover. Grace's hands went to her stomach, and for the first time in months, she felt something other than despair. She felt rage, pure, burning rage at the injustice of it all. She wasn't barren. She had never been barren, and now she was pregnant with 3 children. Children Sheik would never know about, never claim, never acknowledge. But rage doesn't pay rent, rage doesn't feed you. And Grace was homeless, jobless, and pregnant with triplets. She called her old school, hoping to return to her teaching position, but they'd already hired her replacement. Cheek's influence was evident. No other school in Lagos would hire her. Word had spread, poison whispered in the right ears, that she was problematic, unstable, going through personal issues. For 2 months, Grace lived in a women's shelter, working odd jobs, cleaning houses, selling snacks at traffic stops, anything to survive. Her stomach grew. Her situation became more desperate. Then she met Ngozi. Ngozi was a successful businesswoman who owned a chain of boutiques selling traditional Nigerian fabrics. She came to the shelter one Saturday as part of a charity outreach, handing out food and supplies. She noticed Grace immediately, noticed the quiet dignity in how she carried herself, the education evident in her speech, the growing belly she tried to hide beneath loose clothing. "What's your story?" Ngozi asked, sitting beside Grace on a bench. And Grace told her. Everything. The marriage, the accusations, the medical tests, the divorce, the pregnancy with triplets. Ngozi listened without judgment, without interruption. When Grace finished, Ngozi said something that changed everything. "Come work for me." "I'm pregnant with triplets," Grace said. "I'll be useless to you soon. Then you'll work until you can't, rest until you can, and work again when you're ready. I need someone smart, educated, and hardworking. You need a job and a place to stay. This seems simple to me." Ngozi gave Grace a job as her personal assistant, a small apartment above one of her shops, and something more valuable than money: respect, friendship, and belief in her worth. The triplets were born on a rainy Tuesday morning: Chukwudi, Chibueze, and Chinedu. 3 healthy boys with their mother's eyes and their father's stubborn chin. Grace looked at them and made a promise. They would never know poverty, never feel unwanted, never doubt their worth. She kept that promise. Working for Ngozi, Grace learned everything about running a business. She absorbed knowledge like a sponge: inventory management, customer relations, accounting, marketing. Within a year, Ngozi made her a partner. Within 3 years, they'd expanded the business across Nigeria. Within 5 years, Grace had her own line of luxury, African-inspired fashion that was being sold in boutiques across West Africa, Europe, and the United States. Her triplets grew up surrounded by love, education, and 2 mothers who taught them that success is measured not by what you inherit, but by what you build. Grace never spoke about their father. When they asked, she simply said, "Your father couldn't be part of our lives, but you are loved more than you'll ever know." She had moved on. She had healed. She had built a life so far removed from her past that Chike Okonkwo felt like a character from someone else's story, until the invitation arrived. It came in an expensive envelope, delivered to her business address with deliberate precision. Inside was an invitation to Chike Okonkwo's wedding to Miss Zainab Ibrahim, a young woman from a prominent family. But it wasn't just an invitation. It included a handwritten note. "Grace, I wanted you to see what a real wedding looks like. One where the bride isn't cursed, where the woman can actually fulfill her duties. I thought you might enjoy watching what you could never give me. Regards, Chike." The cruelty of it took her breath away. He'd found her, tracked her down, sent this invitation specifically to humiliate her one more time, to rub her face in his new life, his new wife, his presumed future children. Ngozi, reading the note over Grace's shoulder, swore colorfully. "Don't go. He's not worth it. He's trying to hurt you." But Grace stared at that invitation for a long time. She thought about the woman she'd been: broken, desperate, believing the lies about her worth. And she thought about the woman she'd become. Strong, successful, the mother of 3 brilliant boys. "I'm going," she said quietly. "Grace, I'm going, and I'm taking my sons." The wedding was set for Saturday afternoon at one of Lagos's most exclusive garden venues. Cheek had spared no expense. Traditional Nigerian wedding grandeur meets modern luxury. Grace dressed her sons in matching designer agbadas, traditional Nigerian robes in deep burgundy with gold embroidery. She dressed herself in a stunning navy blue lace gown with matching Geel head wrap, her jewelry simple but expensive, her makeup flawless. She hired a black limousine with a driver. As they approached the venue, 6-year-old Chukwudi, the most observant of her sons, looked at the elaborate decorations and asked, "Mommy, why are we going to this man's wedding?" "Because sometimes, my love, we need to face our past to fully appreciate our present." The limousine pulled up to the entrance at exactly 3:47 p.m., just as the ceremony was about to begin. The timing was deliberate. Grace wanted everyone to see her arrival. The driver opened the door. Grace stepped out first, her head held high, moving with the confidence of a woman who'd walked through fire and emerged stronger. Then her 3 sons stepped out, one after another, identical, beautiful, undeniable. The whispers started immediately. "Is that Grace? Isn't she the one he divorced for being barren? Are those triplets?" Grace walked toward the entrance, holding Chukwudi's hand on her right, Chibueze on her left, with Chinedu walking between his brothers. They moved like royalty, unhurried, unbothered. Guests parted to let them through, phones already out, recording, photographing, posting to social media. Inside at the altar, Chiki stood in his elaborate agbada, waiting for his bride. He turned at the commotion, and when his eyes landed on Grace, the color drained from his face. That's when Chukwudi, seeing the man his mother had told him nothing about but whom he'd somehow recognized from the pain that sometimes lingered in her eyes, asked his innocent, devastating question, "Mommy, is that the man who said you couldn't have babies?" His voice, clear and sweet, carried across the silent garden. Every phone was recording now, every guest leaning forward. Grace stopped walking. She looked directly at Chiki, at the man who'd destroyed her life based on a lie, and she smiled, not with bitterness, but with the serene confidence of someone who'd won without fighting. "Yes, baby," she said, her voice carrying clearly. "That's him." Cheek's new bride Zainab materialized from the bridal preparation room, her expensive wedding gown trailing behind her. She looked at Grace, at the triplets, at Cheek's stricken face, and her eyes widened with understanding. "You told me she was barren," Zainab said, her voice sharp with accusation. "You said that's why you divorced her." Those aren't," Cheek stammered, his composure completely shattered. Nkem, Cheek's mother, pushed through the crowd, her face twisted with rage when she saw Grace. "You have some nerve showing up here, with borrowed children, trying to ruin my son's wedding." "Borrowed?" Grace's laugh was soft, but cut through the tension like a blade. She pulled out her phone, scrolling calmly, then held it up. "These are their birth certificates, born 6 months after you threw me out. 3 boys, my sons. DNA tests available upon request. Though I'm not sure Chiki would want those results made public." The crowd erupted in whispers. Chibueze, protective of his mother even at 6, stepped forward. "My mommy is the best mommy in the world. She takes care of us and loves us and never lies. Why did you tell lies about her?" The question, asked with childhood innocence but hitting with adult precision, made several guests gasp. A woman in the crowd, an older lady with kind eyes, spoke up. "I remember you," she said, looking at Grace. "You were married to Cheek. I'm a friend of your mother's. She told me before she died that you were the kindest, most devoted wife. She was heartbroken by how his family treated you." Others began to speak, murmurs growing louder. "I heard he was the one with fertility problems. His cousin told me he blamed her for his own. She was always so sweet, and they treated her terribly." Cheek's face had gone from pale to red. "This is my wedding," he shouted. "You need to leave. All of you, stop listening to her lies." But Zainab was backing away, her eyes filled with tears and realization. You lied to me about everything. You told me she was cursed, that she was the problem, that... She looked at Grace. I'm so sorry. I didn't know. If I had known... Grace looked at the young woman, probably only 22 or 23, and felt a surge of pity. She could have been angry. She could have gloated. Instead, she said quietly, check his medical records before you marry him. A good marriage is built on truth, not lies. Then Grace did something that shocked everyone. She walked up to Chica, who flinched as if expecting her to strike him. Instead, she looked him in the eye and said, I forgive you. The words hung in the air, powerful in their simplicity. I forgive you for the lies, for the cruelty, for the years of pain. Not because you deserve forgiveness, but because I deserve peace. I'm not the broken woman you threw away. I'm not the barren wife you humiliated. I'm a mother. I'm a successful businesswoman. I'm whole and I'm free. She looked around at the 300 guests, at the elaborate decorations, at the wedding that would never be completed. I came here today not to ruin your wedding, but to show my sons that you can't let people who hurt you continue to have power over your life, that you can face your past with your head held high. That karma isn't about revenge, it's about truth eventually coming to light. Chinedu tugged at her dress. Mommy, can we go home now? I don't like it here. Grace smiled and took his hand. Yes, baby, we can go home. She turned and walked back toward the limousine, her 3 sons beside her, leaving behind a wedding in chaos, a groom in disgrace, and 300 witnesses to her triumph. As the limousine pulled away, Chukwudi looked up at his mother. Mommy, why did you forgive that man? He was mean to you. Grace pulled all 3 of her sons close. Because forgiveness isn't about making the other person feel better. It's about freeing yourself from carrying their mistakes. I don't want to spend my life angry at him. I want to spend it loving you 3, building our business, and being happy. Are we happy, Mommy? Chibuiz asked. Grace looked at her 3 beautiful boys, thought about the life she'd built from nothing, remembered the woman she'd been, and celebrated the woman she'd become. Yes, my love, we are very, very happy. This story teaches us powerful lessons about resilience, truth, and the strength that comes from surviving injustice. If Grace's journey can help even one person avoid a similar situation, or give someone the courage to leave a toxic relationship, then her suffering will have meant something beyond her own transformation. Let's look at the key lessons from this remarkable story. First lesson, never sign legal documents without reading them thoroughly. Grace's downfall began when she signed that prenuptial agreement without reading it. She trusted Chiki completely, and that blind trust gave him the legal weapon he would later use against her. If she had taken just 1 hour to consult her own lawyer, to read every clause, she would have seen the trap being set. Don't let love or any emotion blind you to the importance of protecting yourself legally. Read every word. Understand every clause. Get your own lawyer. Your future self will thank you. Second lesson, document everything, especially in toxic relationships. When Grace discovered medical evidence proving Cheek was lying, she didn't immediately secure copies. She waited, and he destroyed the evidence. In any relationship where you suspect deception, document everything, make copies, store them somewhere safe, somewhere the other person can't access. Screenshots, copies, cloud storage, use every tool available. Truth is powerful, but only if you can prove it. Third lesson, your value isn't determined by others' opinions. For years, Grace believed she was barren because everyone around her said so. She internalized their judgment, accepted their verdict on her worth. But their opinion didn't change the truth. She was never the problem. Don't let anyone define your value. Don't accept labels others place on you. You know your truth. Stand in it, even when everyone else is standing against you. Fourth lesson, sometimes the people who hurt you most prepare you for your greatest success. Grace's suffering became her strength. Being thrown out with nothing forced her to rebuild from scratch. That rebuilding process taught her skills, resilience, and self-reliance she never would have developed in her comfortable marriage. Your darkest moments often contain the seeds of your greatest transformation. The question isn't whether you'll face hardship, it's what you'll build from the broken pieces. Fifth lesson, forgiveness is for you, not for them. Grace's forgiveness of Chaiki shocked everyone, but she understood something crucial. Holding on to anger would have poisoned her happiness. Forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. It doesn't mean reconciling. It means refusing to let someone who hurt you continue to rent space in your head. It means choosing your peace over their punishment. Sixth lesson, the best revenge is building a life so good you forget to look back. Grace didn't crash that wedding to hurt Cheek. She went to prove to herself that she'd moved beyond him. The sweet part wasn't his humiliation. It was her realization that she no longer needed his validation. Build a life so fulfilling that the people who rejected you become footnotes in your success story. Today, 8 years after that devastating divorce, Grace and her triplets are thriving. Chukwudi, Chibueze, and Chinedu are now 11 years old, bright, confident boys who excel in school and know they're loved beyond measure. They volunteer with their mother at the same women's shelter where she once lived, helping other women rebuild their lives. Grace's fashion business has expanded internationally. She now employs over 200 people and provides mentorship programs for women leaving abusive marriages. She's become an advocate for prenuptial agreement reform in Nigeria, pushing for laws that protect vulnerable spouses. Her partnership with Ngozi remains strong, two women who built an empire together, proving that the strongest families aren't always bound by blood. And Chike? His wedding never happened. Zainab left him at the altar after discovering he'd lied about his medical history. His reputation in Lagos's social circles never recovered. The last Grace heard, he was living abroad, having left Nigeria to escape the scandal. Grace doesn't think about him much anymore. She's too busy building her future to dwell on her past. Her scars are still there. Some wounds leave permanent marks, but they no longer define her. She's no longer the broken woman crying on a park bench. She is a mother. She is a CEO. She is whole. She is free. If you're watching this and you're in a relationship where someone constantly blames you, diminishes you, or makes you feel worthless, please hear this. Their words are not truth. Their judgment is not fact. You are not the problem just because someone says you are. Document everything. Protect yourself legally. Build your support system. And when the time comes to leave, leave with your evidence, your dignity, and your determination to rebuild. And if you're the friend watching someone being mistreated, be like Ngozi. Don't just offer sympathy, offer real help. A job, a room, belief. Sometimes saving someone's life looks less like dramatic rescue and more like quiet, consistent support. Now I want to ask you something, and I want you to really think about it. If you were in Grace's position, would you have gone to that wedding? Would you have had the strength to forgive, or would anger have consumed you? And here's another question. Was Grace's decision to appear at the wedding justified, or should she have stayed away and let karma work on its own timeline? Drop your answers in the comments below. I read every single comment, and I love hearing your perspectives. If this story moved you, if it made you think, if it taught you something valuable, please do these things. First, subscribe to Lavin Folktales if you haven't already. Hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you won't miss our next story. We share powerful stories of betrayal, justice, redemption, and transformation every week. Second, hit that like button. It helps more people find these stories, and the more people who watch, the more lives we might be able to touch and change. Third, share this video with someone who needs to hear it. Maybe you know someone going through a difficult divorce. Maybe you know someone who's being blamed for things that aren't their fault. Maybe you know someone who needs to understand that their current situation isn't their final destination. Share this story with them. It might be exactly what they need to hear. And finally, stick around and watch some of our other videos. We have stories about karma catching up with cruel people, stories about justice being served, stories about redemption and transformation, family secrets exposed, relationship betrayals, and so much more. There's something for everyone, and I promise you'll find stories that speak to your heart. Thank you for watching this story. Thank you for listening to Grace's journey, for witnessing her pain and her triumph. Remember these lessons. Read before you sign. Document everything. Don't let others define your worth. Your hardships can become your strength. Forgiveness is for you. And build a life so good you forget to look back. Stay safe, everyone. Stay strong. And never stop fighting for your truth. This is Lavin Folktales. See you in the next story.